The rain poured hard over the quiet suburban street as Sarah knelt on the ground, her trembling hands pressed against the lifeless body of her golden retriever, Max. The flashing red and blue lights reflected in her tear-filled eyes. The air smelled of gunpowder and wet asphalt. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He was just a dog, he didn't do anything." But the officers didn't look at her. They mumbled about procedure, misidentification, and public safety. Then they drove off, leaving her in the rain with the one creature that had been her world since her mother's death. They didn't know who her father was. They didn't know what kind of man they had just awakened. Colonel David Kane was 3,000 miles away when the call came through a quiet man with a 1,000-yard stare, sitting alone in a remote cabin. The fireplace flickered against the walls, highlighting scars that told stories no one dared to ask about. When he heard his daughter's broken sobs through the phone, he didn't say a word. He just listened, and then whispered, "I'm coming home." The next morning, the calm soldier who had retired from the world's most secretive unit Delta Force was gone. In his place stood something colder, more precise. A man who had spent 20 years dismantling terrorist networks, toppling warlords, and rescuing hostages from impossible situations. But this time, it wasn't a mission. This time, it was personal. When David arrived back in his hometown, he saw the look in his daughter's eyes, the hollow grief, the fear, and the betrayal. "They said Max attacked them," she sobbed. "But he didn't. He was just barking. He was scared." David's jaw tightened. "They lied to protect themselves," he said quietly. "But I'll make them tell the truth." He started where any good soldier would, with intelligence. He studied the scene, examined the bullet casings, and pulled camera footage from nearby houses. What he found made his blood boil. The officers had entered private property without a warrant. One had panicked when Max barked and fired 3 shots. Then they covered it up, falsifying reports. They had no idea that the man they'd wronged had built his career hunting men who thought they could hide behind lies. David didn't storm the police station guns blazing, that wasn't his way. He went quiet. He watched. He listened. Within days, he knew every cop's schedule, every weak spot in their routines, every secret buried under years of corruption. The first man to fall wasn't physically harmed. David found him leaving a bar one night and whispered in his ear, "You shot an innocent dog. You lied. And I know everything about you." By the next morning, the man had confessed on video, voice trembling, eyes red from fear, exposing the truth that his department had tried to bury. But David didn't stop there. The police chief, a man who'd built his career on intimidation, tried to frame Sarah and her father, planting evidence to make it look like David was threatening the department. That was their biggest mistake. David outsmarted them all. Using his military experience, he hacked their surveillance feeds, recorded every false statement, and sent the data to every news outlet in the state. Within hours, the story exploded across media platforms. Police shoot family pet, then cover it up. The city turned against its own officers. Protesters filled the streets, demanding justice. The chief was forced to resign, and the officers involved were arrested. But none of that brought Max back. One night, when the noise of the city had quieted and the chaos faded, Sarah sat beside her father on the porch. She leaned on his shoulder, her eyes swollen from crying. "Dad," she whispered, "I didn't want you to go to war for me." He looked at her gently, placing a hand on her head. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "I didn't go to war. I fought for peace, for you to never feel powerless again." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then he added, his voice breaking for the first time, "Max was family. And family is worth fighting for." Weeks later, Sarah stood before the local council, Advocating for a new law. Max's law requiring stricter rules for use of force against animals and mandatory accountability for misconduct. Her speech went viral. People across the nation shared her story. And while the world moved on, Colonel David Kane quietly returned to his cabin in the woods. He never sought recognition or glory. He had done what he came to do: protect his daughter, honor his friend, and remind the world that justice isn't about violence, it's about courage, love, and standing up when no one else will. As he looked at the picture of Max framed on the mantel, he whispered, "Rest easy, boy. We did it." The wind blew through the trees, soft and calm, as if the world itself was finally at peace. Moral of the story? Even the smallest act of injustice can awaken great courage. Love pure, loyal, and unbreakable can turn grief into strength and silence into a war for truth. Would you like me to format this story into a YouTube video script next, with narration, camera directions, and emotional pacing for a 15-minute video? It'll make it perfect for storytelling content or voiceover.